Redfall's console launch is giving red flags. Should Arcane delay Redfall? And is the hype for Redfall falling off? Microsoft's upcoming Day 1 Game Pass release from Arkane Studios, the team that gave us Dishonored, Deathloop, and Prey, is generating a lot of discussion online. Up to this point, the hype surrounding the co-op vampire hunting FPS hero shooter Redfall has outweighed the skepticism. But after a recent series of questionable developer choices, mixed gameplay demonstrations, and a general confusion with the state of the game on different platforms, PC, Xbox Series, and so on, we here at Pure Xbox thought, you know what, why don't we have a good chat about it? Ahoy folks, Craig signing in as Player 1 for today's Chinwag. My Player 2 is a very lovely human being, wearer of monkey hats and a top-notch writer for PureXbox.com. Here's Mr. Ben Kerry. Hello.
Hi, Craig. I have had the fortunate or unfortunate job of covering lots of Redfall news, and at the minute it's a little bit here nor there. We don't really know what's going on, but there's a lot to talk about.
There is indeed. And we've slapped the DualSense from his hands. Our Player 3, maybe even like I gave him the awkward controller. You know, like when you have a guest, you don't really want to give them your good controller. I think that's what I'm doing to our Player 3, Mr. Aaron Bayne from Push Square. Hello.
Hello there, Craig. Yeah, it's very rude of you. I want the best version controller that you have right now. I want that Elite controller.
What, my Halo one?
The Halo one, specifically.
I'd struggle to give you that.
You will not pry the Halo Elite from Craig's cold, dead hands.
No. The rigor mortis will set in and it will be impossible. So, thank you very much for joining me today. Obviously, we've got plenty of stuff to talk about when it comes to Redfall. I'd say it's easy to get stuck into all of the news surrounding what might not be so good about Redfall, and we could talk about that immediately, but I would like to gauge some excitement, because ultimately, I think we are excited.
I think, like a lot of people, I came into Arcane games through Dishonored, through the first Dishonored.
Yeah.
And they've kind of stuck to a fairly similar template for all of their games. Especially like the first two Dishonors and Prey, they kind of share a lot of the same DNA, and I think from day one, on the Xbox side of things, we've been really excited to see Arcane branch out, because co-op shooters are aplenty, but there's not really many with that like Arcane flavour. So
yeah,
I think it feels like the right, well, until all the news recently, it's felt like the right kind of game for Arcane to like launch their kind of Xbox first-party library with. So I've been covering lots on it, and I mean, recently they spoke about it being similar to Far Cry rather than Left 4 Dead. I think it looks like there's shades of both in there.
Yeah.
But I'm just hoping that the open world is kind of engaging enough, because that's what I want from an Arcane game.
For sure. Yeah.
Weirdly enough, this is partly why I was very excited about this. I'm not like the Dishonored guy. Prey is really the game that I love. Like, it's genuinely probably top 5 games of all time for me. I just absolutely adore that game, and obviously here we're getting Arkane Austin again coming in with Redfall. So as soon as I heard that they were making something and it was going to be exclusively on Xbox, it was just for me immediately like, well, I need to get an Xbox because I have to play this game. As soon as I heard about the co-op stuff, it gave me a bit of pause, I will say, because I'm actually a huge fan of co-op stuff. I love my live service online games. I'm really all about that. Kind of like what Ben was saying there, it's weird to have those aspects coming from an Arcane game, because when you think of an Arcane game, you're thinking of an immersive open world that you want to explore, or not necessarily open world, but kind of open areaed game. And
they're rich.
They're rich with really
environmental storytelling.
Yeah, it's the kind of games that invite you to like really scour each and every corner of its maps, and gives you sort of the player freedom in a way as well to just immerse yourself in these games. That's what I love about them. You kind of go at your own pace, and the idea of being a multiplayer thing where you're playing with other people and it's got these looter shooter aspects, it's weird, because any other developer, I would have been like, oh yeah, I'm really up for that, it's cool to see this. But then having it from Arcane, where I think, oh, I could have had another one, like another version of Prey, another version of Dishonored, but with some new IP, it feels like it's been taken away from me a little bit.
I'm hoping they're gonna treat it in the same way as Dishonored's relationship to Deathloop. They're all part of this one big Arcane video game universe, and it would be so cool to see environmental set pieces that establish Redfall in the same universe. Maybe they mention a rat plague, or there's an enlisting space program trying to get people aboard the Talos 1 to, you know, hint at prey, or even just talking about this island with weird time loop. Like, establishing an Arcane video game timeline, a universe, is something that gets me really excited. But if we're going to move on to the next point, which Aaron's already touched on, being the single player aspect and how multiplayer might affect it, is there a risk of losing what makes an Arcane game so special by adding multiplayer?
Yeah, I think that's totally going to be the case with this, to be honest. I think you don't... Just how you play with people, generally, you're not going to want to be the guy that people are waiting to go ahead, and you're like, no, hold on a minute, I just want to, like, look at this little bit. Like, obviously, if you had the friends that were willing to allow you to do that, that's fine, but I just feel like naturally you are going to go towards that, just running through the maps in a way.
It's kind of funny because you don't want to miss out, but by spending too much time in one place, making sure you don't miss out, you miss out on the progression.
That whole aspect makes me wonder if they've got some sort of tether between players. I think they've touched on this before, and I think they might have said like, oh yeah, but it's huge and you're never gonna, but if we are like, as we're all saying, we are like looking at every nook and cranny for any little bit of Arcane storytelling, then at some point I'm gonna wander off and be like, if we all know Arcane for making immersive sims, if you're then getting some weird message on your screen that's basically like you're too far away from your co-op buddies.
Just like clouds half the screen with, you're going to be transported to your mates in 5 seconds, and you're like, but I'm reading this piece of paper that's on the floor in the corner of this upstairs apartment that I had to break a door down to go and read. And then you're going to feel a bit sad about that.
Yeah, I have to admit that I know that this isn't where Arcane want to go with it, but I'm coming into Redfall with the kind of plan of, I'm just going to play it as a single player game and get as far as I can.
Yeah.
Like, if I can experience the majority of the storytelling that Arcane are gonna put out there on my own, that's how I'm gonna play it. I've seen recent gameplay with like these kind of like shared fights and these boss battles and all that stuff, and I'm a little bit like, it's probably gonna kick my butt if I'm playing in solo, but
yeah,
that's the plan.
Yeah, that whole aspect just kind of worries me. It's that weird thing that we're seeing a lot more in some of these games as well, where like you're taking, so like Arcane, you expect them to make a single player game, they go, no, it's co-op, it's got multiplayer aspects, but I do feel like there's always a little bit of like mystery, and there's a bit of like cloudiness as to like exactly the nature of the game. I think it's happened with like Avengers. When Avengers first came out, it was like, is this a single player game or is it a co-op game? It's got a campaign, are you playing it with friends? And then like, you know, 5 hours into that game it just goes, yeah, we're not single player anymore, you're just going to be playing the same missions over and over again. I think the same kind of worry was there with Suicide Squad, because you're like, how are Rocksteady going to make a game that's multiplayer but single player at the same time? And I do feel like Arcane again are trying to straddle that line where you can play it single player, but you're not really going to be experiencing the gameplay side of things as we properly intended. But then if you're playing it co-op, maybe you're not going to experience the world stuff like we were just saying. So it has me wondering now, like from a development standpoint, like, are they trying to say that single player games aren't really worth doing? Is like, are we looking at co-op games and looter shooters? Are they like the only way that you can make a game like this anymore kind of successful? I don't get why that would be the pitch, you know.
One of the recent decisions that Arcane have made, I think they put out on an FAQ page that there was a persistent online connection required to play both modes. The always online requirement doesn't really irk me. It doesn't at all, because the idea of an internet connection to enjoy extra features that require internet is not news. Let's take Wolong Fallen Dynasty. It's not like for like example, some of the enemies are buffed because a player has died in that location, and you get extra bonuses and so on for being that person. And when you're offline, you won't have that opportunity. So it adds a lot of stuff. But what does irk me is story progression is only tied to the host account, right? And the co-op people that join, your friends that join that game, won't receive any of that story progression. They will only receive character XP.
Yeah, it is an odd decision. I think it's strange as well because I have questions of like, okay, if I go into somebody else's hosted lobby and I rank my character up so far, and then I go back into single player, like how does that translate? Am I suddenly going to be like fighting higher level enemies because I've been in somebody else's co-op game? How does
You're going to basically
work?
be Anakin walking in and just slaughtering the foundlings.
So yeah, with the host progression thing, I mean, I would prefer it if everybody's story progressed, but I do understand that Arcane are kind of trying to figure this out as they go, which kind of brings me back to the always online thing. That sounds like, because they've said that they're going to patch it, they're going to patch an option to play offline.
Yeah.
But they've said that it's like they've got to like basically rework the entire game behind the scenes because they have things like scaling enemies and all that. So I don't know how that's going to work.
I actually didn't know this about the progression, and
it makes you feel weird, doesn't it?
That feels like a big mistake in terms of, like, if you want to experience it yourself, maybe you're playing with someone and it's like you're a little bit ahead and you have to do it again. I don't know. It's just who's going to be like drawing the short straw out of your friends where you go, right, we want to play this together, but this is my game. I want to be the one progressing.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to play it again. And then are you going to play it again with those friends? Are they going to ditch you because they've already played it? Like,
you can contextualize it with games like Destiny again. There are limitations to players being able to play missions, judging by their own progression. And I know that builds a lot of barriers in that co-op experience.
Yeah, it just, again, feels like a conflict between the whole solo and co-op thing as well. It's almost encouraging you to play it on your own in your own time with your own server if you are one of the hosts. If it's been patched in, I suppose my only worry, but when I was just hearing he's talking about this, because I have been relatively kind of hands off of like looking into this game too much. I just knew I wanted to play it, because for Arcane games, for me anyway, they're the kind of games that I do dip into like over the years. Like I've played Prey like a handful of times ever since it released, whenever that was. Same codes for Dishonored, which is like
2017.
I was going to say 2007. I didn't want to out myself here as like
Should've
a fake
gone
fan
with
or
your
something.
gut.
I know. But they are games that traditionally I go back to over time. Like I've been thinking about playing Deathloop again. If they're building the game where it's kind of better to play it like that, if I go to play Redfall again 3 years down the line, how's the experience going to be if I can't get people to play it because everyone's moved on, they're fed up with it now, you know?
Yeah.
What I'm wondering is, do you think that the Arcane gameplay style is going to hold up in a kind of, in that co-op environment? Like, do you think their first-person gameplay is there? Because like when I think Dishonored is a different example. I'd say Dishonored really works well with its powers and its swords and stuff, but like Deathloop or Prey, I don't think like, oh wow, they've got the best and most like tight knit gameplay I've ever experienced. So do you think that's going to carry over into a more online environment?
I think sort of Arcane's general shooting mechanics will hold up. They're not perfect, but we're not going for like a PvP element, so I think that they'll be okay. I do kind of worry for the open world design a little. Like in Dishonored, I just loved like slinking around with the blink. There's a blink ability, is that what it's called? Yeah. Teleport. And I kind of think, again, I'm just going to go at it as a single player experience because I don't want other people messing. Maybe I just don't have the right co-op people to play with. I think
if you play with me, I will happily let you sit in a corner and read a wall.
I don't know if I believe you.
I will be in that corner with you.
All right, okay, so it'll be like a prayer class or something.
Yeah. We can go out on a guided tour.
Yes. Okay. We'll do the guided tour of Redfall, the pure Xbox guided tour. No. Yeah. So I think the shooting mechanics will be okay. We've all seen the recent gameplay and sort of questioning
Yeah.
how it will hold up with the boss fight and stuff. But I think it'll be okay. I think that it will kind of depend on your party.
Yes.
Like if you can all work together and you can kind of use and utilize the tools that Arcane give, and I think it'll be good. Do we even know if it's got like public matchmaking?
I haven't got the foggiest, but I'm gonna assume it does.
Yeah, I'm going to assume it does, like Borderlands style. I think if you go in public with an Arcane game and you're expecting that Arcane experience, you might be in for a bit of a rude awakening.
Yes, you're going to be wanting to enjoy the flavor of an Arcane whilst you have this random chap going Leroy Jenkins and just speed running the entire game. I agree. I feel like you're going to have to choose who you play it with. This is the first time you're going to cooperatively combine abilities. In Dishonored, you are left to your own devices. You will figure out the coolest, most slickest way to blink around the map. Deathloop was introducing multiplayer, but it's a protagonist-antagonist sort of thing. You just turn up to kill each other. But what I think we're going to lose out on is the satisfaction that comes with the combo efforts. The ability to throw yourself up in the air, pull off this sick shot, maybe slay someone from behind in a stealthy manner, and you can do all that in one fluid motion. Mm-hmm. Whereas now it's going to be, I will do this, you'll do that, we'll do this together, and we'll high five at the end. And if you've got the right people, I think it will still be very special, but the world is full of game players and they're not going to be playing it the same way as you are. So there is a worry. There is a worry there that you will lose that DNA.
There's also like the aspect of like, we're really going to have to be moving away from stealth quite a bit here, because I don't think you're going to be able to play a Dishonored style stealth game with 3, 4, how many people is it that are in your squad?
It's up to 4, yeah.
Up to 4, so like 3 other people with you as well. I think there's going to be light stealth aspects, but it's going to be like stealthy for the first little bit. Oh, somebody spotted it, now it's full on action. Whereas like, I remember my time with Dishonored when you're like you were saying, Ben, just slinking around, like really taking your time, like waiting for the exact moment that this guy just turns the wrong way, and then you're going up and you're stabbing him from behind and you're trying to get out of the way before the next guy comes. You're studying the patrol routes of different guards and stuff. Like, that's not going to be here. I highly doubt it will be, at least. I don't think it's going to be able to be the same level, at least.
Yeah. I think with like any online co-op game, you just have, like, stealth just tends to go out the window, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's kind of the nature of the beast. I think we do have to give Arcane we have to put our faith in Arcane a little bit to kind of work the powers between co-op partners. I think that we've not seen tons of that through the gameplay. We've not seen tons of like anything that's super coordinated, and I think it goes back to what we were saying about having the right party. I think if you have the right party, they're gonna have figured it out where those like powers that you were mentioning, Craig, are gonna be like spread across the characters. And I think it might even elevate it to a certain level if it all clicks. It's just whether
there's nothing better than when you look at your mate and you go, we just did that. Like, that in itself is a special moment. It's swapping it. Like, we have to bear in mind, this isn't Dishonored. Mm-hmm. They've done Dishonored. Dishonored is incredible. This is Redfall. Redfall's
I want
co-op.
Dishonored 3.
I think we all do.
I think, yeah, it could be coming after this.
Ooh.
I did.
Ooh,
It crossed my mind. It did cross my mind when I was watching stuff today, because I was like, oh, I wonder what Arkane Leon is going to be doing next, since they're done with Deathloop. That's the hope.
Yeah.
The irony is that it will always be Deathloop, because it's a loop.
Oh.
They will never stop developing that game.
Damn.
Anyway, in other news, a recent tweet came out from Redfall directly. I think, Ben, you even said this. You got to admire him for just outing with the information. But Redfall is launching on PC and Xbox. But the Xbox console launch is only coming with quality mode. So that's 4K with 30 FPS on the Series X. That's 1440p at 30 FPS on the Series S. And there is no 60 FPS mode. Performance mode is coming at a later date. Twitter is a cesspool of opinions, but it's quite funny. One of them from It's Mr. Products wrote, and I resonated with this one, was great April Fool's joke, guys. Bit late, but really made me chuckle. Right, guys? Guys? And I think that really sums it up. So, what do we think? does, 30 FPS, is that a bad choice? Is it clearly got no place in 2023 gaming, especially for an Xbox first-party exclusive?
Yeah, I have thoughts. Too many thoughts. But this is just one of those things where it feels like it's another loss for Xbox. Like the Series X, the flagship console, and I don't really buy the whole, this is because of the Series S. Like, I think,
I don't sign up to that.
I don't sign up to that at all. But I look at it and I'm like, this is Arcane's first Xbox first party launch. From what I understand, Deathloop was a high frame rate game when it launched on PlayStation 5. It at least had multiple modes.
Mm-hmm. As far as I remember, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know if it's something to do with Arcane kind of transitioning into a more open world that they're struggling with, some of the systems in the back end, but it's just not a good look. I think people are sort of expecting Starfield to maybe be 30 frames a second because it's a huge Bethesda RPG.
I know you've got an ongoing wager with our editor, Fraser,
yes,
about whether or not it will launch with 30 FPS.
Bets have been placed on Starfield as to whether it'll have a performance mode. I'm going to win.
Tears will be shed.
Yes. So I think it's overblown to an extent. I will admit that I don't think there's a huge problem with them coming out and saying it's 30, we're trying for 60, we're going to do it at a later date. It's just more the kind of Xbox exclusivity angle for me. I don't think there's anything specific to Redfall. It's just, you're Microsoft and you really should be pushing for this. They've been the frame rate kings probably over PlayStation in terms of their messaging, and they've got the FPS boost program. They've kind of done all of this, and then they're just we're launching at 30, which I think we were all a little bit shocked by, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think it is a massive, massive mistake to launch this game at 60. I am very much in the camp
at 30.
Sorry, at 30, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, hey, I would love 60. Let's go.
Massive mistake at 60. Go for 120. No,
yeah, come on.
I am of the opinion that we should not be getting AAA games launching at 30 FPS. I think give it as an option if you want to go for your 4K ray tracing route, but especially for an FPS game, bringing it out at 30 is just not the one. There's a reason why people now look for these PS5 upgrades, look into the PlayStation side of things, but these next-gen upgrades, like The Witcher, for example. I held off watching playing The Witcher again for years because I just couldn't bear the frame rate. And then having the option to play it at 60 immediately makes it so much better. And I think if you ask almost any gamer out there, 9 out of 10 of them are going to tell you they would rather have a higher frame rate over 4K 4K graphics. I obviously don't understand the development side of things. I'm going to assume it's easier to run things at 4K than it is to get it at 1080p and 60. Maybe, I don't really know.
Yeah, it is a bit of a choice to go for resolution over frame rate.
When we're getting to the point now where 120 is supposed to be a possibility with these next gen consoles, with the Series X and the PS5, why are we getting a big game like this coming out at the 30? And to be honest, it made me think that I would just not play it on launch and wait until that point, because I think if, like we're saying, in terms of concerns over whether the Arcane gameplay style is going to translate to a co-op setting, if you then put that in with 30 FPS, I think a lot of people are going to be turned off of it, especially if you're trying to convince people that maybe haven't played an Arcane game before, maybe the kind of people that are, your Call of Duty players or your Destiny players. If you're bringing it onto Game Pass like this and then it's playing at 30, a lot of people might just go, nah, this isn't for me. It feels a bit clunky in comparison. And I genuinely was quite shocked that was the case. And I think you're right in terms of one of Xbox's first big exclusives. Obviously we've been kind of waiting for a lot of them, and 2023 is looking like it's going to be the year for that. But then having Redfall, which is literally the reason I bought my Xbox, then saying we're going to be running at frame rates and such that have been possible since the last generation, to me is just not on, and it's a massive letdown.
You could also say, on top of that, everything that we've seen for Redfall so far has been 60 FPS, which would set an unconscious expectation. You go onto YouTube, you got your 4K video at 60 FPS, you see it running, it's smooth. Of course, that must mean it's been captured on PC. And with, no clear indication of when the FPS performance mode will land on console, you've got to start thinking this game is launching on Game Pass on both PC and console. PC's getting it fine. They're going to get those frame rates. Console players are going to feel hard done by because it's the exact same game on the exact same service. You're going to get a worse version. And I don't think you can blame the hardware for that. I don't think you can. I feel that as though that is a development work that maybe they haven't figured out yet, which, brings us to whether or not Redfall should be delayed. We point at this whole Microsoft should learn from their mistakes. This is first party. This is a big AAA launch for Xbox. We had Halo Infinite, for example. It got delayed for a good reason. Like, Craig the Brute exists, although I'm thankful for his existence. He should never have been born. Bless his heart. But after that delay, it still launched in a broken state. Couch co-op wasn't there. There was no Forge mode, and it was kind of a mess. With those mistakes in mind, they're at the risk of doing that again. I just feel like they're not listening, even though Phil has come out and said, we messed up with Halo, right? We messed up. We learned from that. I don't think launching a game capped is going to really resonate as, yes, we listened to that.
Yeah. Xbox are in a really weird spot with this because I think they've come out and they've said things like, we've learned from it, we delayed Halo and stuff, but people would probably argue that Halo didn't benefit that much from the delay. Like, there was still a lot of things that were missing when it came out the year later.
I think the scenario around Halo as well was a little different in the sense that, like, there was a general impression that game needed to come out because, like, we'd been waiting for so long for it, and Xbox Series X was out without any real, like, because it came out after the launch.
It was supposed to go out with it.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be the
it was a full year later.
Yeah, so, like, you have a console where you're, like, waiting for, like, the big game, and Halo very much represents that for Xbox. So I think there was an awkward kind of attitude at that point to be like, well, they could delay it again, but really, like, are people then just going to be, like, fed up? Like, this should have been out ages ago. I don't think that's the case for Redfall. I don't think people are, like, counting down the days in the same way that they would be for Halo. I think people would very much be open to a delay. And if we're talking about, like, a 60 FPS thing, how long a delay are you really going for it? And I think just for an FPS game, if it was a month, if it was 2 months, for the sake of it releasing in a more playable state, because I don't think 30 is really like like the optimum solution, then I would be willing to wait a little longer.
I would say it's not a deal breaker either. 30 FPS isn't a deal breaker, but
kind of is for me. It kind of is for me, I would say.
Yeah. It depends, exactly. It depends on who you are. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of people that are like-minded, which would just be like, not playing it. There are better games coming out, which around the May 2nd release date, which Redfall has currently scheduled, there are 2 big games. Star Wars Jedi Survivor, which is out April 28th, and Tears of the Kingdom. Do you think, the timeline could be pushed back and people would just forgive it?
I think there's a little bit with what we've just been talking about Halo. Aaron, you just said about like fans not being bothered about a delay, and I think that Halo is like the last big exclusive, and we're like 18 months on from that point. So I don't think that Redfall specifically is the same. I get what you're saying; it's not the same as Halo, but Microsoft has kind of had this slate that just keeps moving. It keeps getting pushed. This is
biting at the bit.
Yeah, they've said however many games are going to come out within 12 months of the last E3, and this is the only one that's getting in there by like the 11th month. So I think somewhere along the line Microsoft have said this is coming out before summer, and if you can't do the 60 frames, if you can't fully optimize that, it's going to have to come at a later date. Somewhere along the line, Microsoft does have to just kind of like get some of these games out because, as Craig was just saying about that, 60 frames a second might be a deal breaker for you, but if there's a large portion of the community that are happy at 30,
a lot of people don't notice the difference.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I remember years ago watching the documentary for The Last of Us, and this is like the original PS3 release, and they were talking about the whole idea of getting it to 60, and they were like, man, like, we love it, but that's a bit wild, isn't it? And like, that's kind of what's been sticking in my head with this, where you're like, I'm talking about a documentary that came out 10 years ago for a game 10 years ago where they were talking about struggling to get above 30 FPS. Here we are now with a new game that's next gen only, still not getting above 30 FPS on launch. So maybe I'm being a bit too cynical about it all, but yeah, it's not something that kind of sat right with me.
You're not a cynic, not at all. We said we were looking forward to it.
Yes, I'm still looking forward to
Yes.
it, but I do feel like if we get some sort of update on the timescale of when the 60 FPS thing's going to come, I can't imagine it would be more than like a month or two after the fact, and then I'm wondering, did I just wait then? Did I just hold off for that?
For instance, if it was a week later and this FPS performance mode came out, it would make zero sense to change so much money put into marketing to just change the date. So you gotta give them a little bit of leeway, thinking that perhaps this update will just come very soon, but it's the lack of information that makes us a bit more skeptical.
Yeah, I saw that take as well somewhere where somebody was like, they should have just kind of gone into probably a little bit more detail, maybe given a specific reason for it, or maybe given like a bit of a timeline, because
Yeah,
I
it creates
think,
uncertainty.
Yeah, because I think if they've come out with this statement now, that kind of makes me think that it isn't going to be a week. It isn't gonna, like, it's going to be a good few months for them to get this thing going.
You do have to kind of admire a little bit with them saying that over, like, when you look at the Gotham Knights scenario, where it was, it broke in the worst kind of way for the developer. That's slipping my mind right now. But for Gotham Knights, where people were slowly starting to realise, like, oh, wait a minute, is this game 30? And then they started getting leaks and people that were playing the game saying, oh, this is 30, this is 30. And that was like a really big negative thing for that game. And then I do think it does ease that a little bit by them just coming out and being like, no, this is 30, just to let you know. And it kind of brings them out ahead of it a little bit.
It's like you're caught off guard.
Yeah.
Doing something you shouldn't do.
I think it's probably going to have like eased off some of that, especially when it gets to the point with the game coming out. We've all known for over a month at this point that it's going to be playing it at 30. So yeah,
I think the fact that it's a Game Pass launch as well is there's just going to be kind of a lot of excitement anyway. I think once some of this controversy dies down a little bit.
Yeah. So for wrapping things up, and I guess just for the sake of putting it all in front and center, an opinion, do you think that Redfall would benefit from a delay?
No.
Aaron?
Yes, but now that Ben's explained the whole Xbox scenario, I do get it. Because obviously I haven't really thought about it from that angle. So yes, I would like to, but I do understand why it wouldn't get one.
We've got a no, we don't want it delayed. Yes, we want it delayed. And I would go as far as to say, no, I don't think it should be delayed. And on that note, I'd just like to thank Ben and Aaron for joining me. Of course, Ben is one of the writers at purexbox.com. He writes plenty of amazing things, as well as the rest of the team there, and I think you should go ahead and check him out. And of course, we have Aaron. Good boy, Aaron.
Good boy,
I'll take
Aiden.
back the crusty controller now. I'm sorry I had to do that to you. But thank you so much for joining me from Push Square.
Nice.
Obviously, you can subscribe to the Push Square YouTube channel.
Yes, you can.
Which is top notch. Top notch. Aaron does a fantastic job. But also, there's pushsquare.com.
It's pure Xbox, but less green.
Yeah. It's
blue
it's
instead
blue.
of green.
Thank you so much for joining me. If you liked the video, then, like it. Just like it. Be kind. Or dislike it. It doesn't matter. Whatever you want to do. And consider subscribing. As for now, I've been Craig, and ta-ra! I don't mind the ta-ra nowadays. I'm getting really loose with my endings. I'm just like, goodbye!